Welcome to a special episode of Watching Worst Films, the podcast in which we will be watching every Razzie Worst Picture winner. For the first time, we are joined by a guest, Darren Doane, the writer, director, star of Saving Christmas. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, welcome. Lovely to have you here.
Great to be here. No, I was saying, I was really excited when I saw what you guys were doing, which maybe most people would be like, why would you do that? But I was like, actually, it's kind of the whole point of even why I made Saving Christmas, which is that I've always just had a very punk rock approach to doing stuff. And sometimes that ends up being something that people love, hate, make fun of, or both. But it's the same, but it all starts from the same place, which is kind of like, I'm sure with you guys with your podcast, you thought this was a good idea for whatever reason, right? And you only had to convince each other, right? And
absolutely.
And then you're doing it, and and so for me, in a lot of ways, that was Saving Christmas. Like, we were literally just sitting around laughing, making stupid jokes about what we thought would be a really funny thing to do that we never thought people were even going to see.
Wow.
Like, we really thought it was going to be for like our kids.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. No, and that's the thing. If it wasn't for this journey, we wouldn't have heard of Saving Christmas. We wouldn't have watched Saving Christmas. So it's brought it to our attention. It's just like punk rock. Sometimes the infamy can lead to discovering things.
Yeah, no, and for me, it was like doing this really subversive. Like, I grew up, I loved indie film. I loved John Cassavetes. I loved John Waters. I loved Harmony Korine movies like Gummo, and like just really like, Gummo for me is like still one of the greatest things like ever made.
Herzog.
But if I showed, what's that?
Is Herzog and Gummo? Am I thinking the wrong one? Am I thinking of Trash?
No, you're close. No, Herzog is, I think he is, you're right, but then Harmony Korine loves Herzog. That's the whole point. He loves Herzog.
It's all the same. Just grab a camera and do it.
Right. And so I love all that stuff too. It just, I've had a weird career. I've been all over the place. And so in a weird way, Saving Christmas for me was like doing Herzog. Yeah. It was like, what if we just got together and did something just super weird and funny, like what we think would be weird and funny, like something you normally wouldn't really do in this space. But the idea was still always like, well, let's just go make it. Like, let's just go make it, and it was, I was shocked when we got a phone call and it was Sony Pictures, like, hey, we'd like to see this Christmas movie you've got. And it was like, well, it's kind of like just, we think it's funny and kind of silly, but at the same time, for me, it was still super subversive. Like, to me, it was still like very subversive. I was like, how can I make a movie where all I do is talk about Jesus in a way that like nobody would really think I'm watching a movie like about Jesus, and it was really the idea, like, if you ever went to like a really kind of like bad, but like kind of heartfelt, like school presentation of like the nativity, like you went to like, they did a school play, and the idea was you just grabbed what you had and you kind of put it together and you got who you could. This guy's gonna play Joseph, doesn't look like Joseph, but you just sort of threw it together and you just really just had fun with it. And then Sony calls and Sony's like, can we see this Christmas movie? And we're like, yeah, you can. And I remember we went to the screening room, like in Burbank, California, and I can't sit and watch any of my stuff. So I'm in the hallway, and I hear all these executives just laughing.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, like are they into it? I was like, that's kind of funny, and they came out and they're like, and then they just wrote a big check. And so it was sort of like taking like back to Gummo and back to Harmony Korine. It would be like to me, the whole, I'll let you ask questions, but I'll kind of give you my quick insight into how weird this was, which was, it was sort of like taking Gummo and having your mom watch it, or having your mom watch a John Waters movie, right?
Mrs.
Like,
Waters,
you would never
watching
ask her to do that. Yes, you would never ask her to do that.
No,
like you wouldn't do that.
It wouldn't occur to you.
And so, right, or like you wouldn't give her a heavy metal album or like a grindcore band and be like, "Mom, what do you think?" And in a way, I know this Like you wouldn't do that. And for me, I was like, you're literally taking a bunch of inside jokes on a Christian subculture, and you're going to put it in the theater? Like you're going to send this to the LA Times for a review? I was like, have at it, and next thing you know, it's like in theaters and they do the whole thing. And I think the first weekend it does a couple million or something, and I'm tripping. I'm like, we just did a couple $1 million we spent like $100,000. We just did a couple. We just made millions of dollars at the box office.
Oh yeah.
And the real story where this gets interesting, I think why we're even talking is because the movie's doing phenomenal. Yeah, I mean the LA Times, New York Times, obviously no one's writing a good review on it. But all of a sudden someone calls us and says, "Have you seen Rotten Tomatoes?" And we're like, no. And we go look at Rotten Tomatoes, and since only 4 people reviewed it, it had like a whatever it is, the squash tomato, right?
Yeah.
And it had a 98, 99% audience review. Insane, right?
Yeah.
And so Kirk goes on Facebook, and Kirk's like, "Thank you so much, Rotten Tomatoes. You guys are sending your voice, your message. I love it." It gets picked up on Reddit.
Yeah.
And this atheist thread on Reddit goes, "Let's go fuck Kirk up. Let's go. Let's and next thing you know, because if you look at how many people on Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, it's tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And it just goes boom.
Yeah, because that's why it's so low, is because it's the review bombing. I mean, compared to everything else,
Right.
It's just it's the quantity of it, isn't it? Absolutely.
Right.
Of all the films we've covered, there's few that have this sort of passion behind it from people who just haven't seen the film. But it has that sort of weird hate following, when most other Razzies people are connected to the film or in some way. Whereas this just became like that weird sort of snowball of Redditors and people being like,
And so for me, I was like, I'm having my John Waters moment. I was like, this is divine picking up the dog poop and eating it, and people tripping out like, you can't do this. And I was like, oh my goodness, this was supposed to be an inside joke, fun movie for kids and do something. And now everyone's up in arms, and Twitter was really at its beginning to be its thing also at that time. And it was just going, because the weird Christian subculture I was in, this is what think about music, like underground grindcore, Norwegian death metal, how sub can you go? I was in this weird subculture of evangelical Christians that were all anti-Christmas. There's a whole group. There's a whole group you shouldn't celebrate Christmas. You're not a Christian if you celebrate Christmas. And so for me, and so for me, that was my big FU to those Christians. As a Christian, I was like, no, you should be going all in on this. So it was like a fight going on over here that was never meant to be brought to everybody else, right? And then,
you're beset
and then
on all sides.
And then everyone was upset. And I was like, this is the most punk rock, craziest thing I could have ever somehow stumbled into. It was just, and so that was the, and then the thing went on to do, I don't know, between 10 and 15 million or so. I bought a house. I mean, it was just,
oh no,
a house at Christmas time.
Exactly. I was like, I couldn't believe, it just kept paying me.
Yeah. And that's I think when we've been covering, this is the biggest return to budget of any of the Razzies or any of the films we've covered so far. Like you said, on such a small budget and such a DIY ethic about it, the returns it's crazy. It's it was the infamy
we're
itself.
Looking at the other way around. It's like they spent tens of millions and then 3 people
and
to
then
see it opening weekend, whereas you're a complete anomaly in that made it on a shoestring. And
right. It's with friends and family and just having a good time. And Kirk, by the way, so to your point, it was interesting what you brought up. Something is wrong about that. You're totally right. Kirk was going to play my character.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
As we got closer to filming, nothing was working out in casting. We just couldn't find the right jerk. The nice guy, and Kirk just didn't come across being the jerk. Like,
Yeah.
and so we would just but we just kept we didn't really rehearse. The funny thing is, again, this was so punk rock, there wasn't a script.
Yeah. Okay.
We just had a structure, and then we just improv. And I just always wanted to just fully improv.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to just really go for it. So we had a structure. But at some point, Kirk just said, because I kept trying to direct him when we were rehearsing, he just kept cracking up. And at some point he said, why don't you just play the jerk?
Yeah.
Like, I'll be the nice guy. That's my job. I'll be the nice guy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of how that flip was. So when I saw your review on it, I was like, they don't know how close they are.
Amazing. I'd never, because it just makes so much sense that Kirk would play that role. So it's interesting to imagine the mirror image version of it.
That would be a subversion to me, is Kirk, you know, playing your role as well, because that's not what I would have thought with Kirk Cameron. You know, I felt like his role was Kirk himself, you know, like.
When you said Kirk playing Baby Jesus and Kirk playing Santa Claus, I was like, but you have to understand, you guys thought that was funny. That's what got me into this mess. Was thinking, you know what would be funny, right? You know, it's like, and that's like, you think it's funny, but that was the whole point. It was like, we should do this, we should do that. Like, we were just riffing.
Yeah.
And we'd come off of a couple of projects I had done for him that had done really well.
Mm-hmm.
We had the money. Christmas was coming up. We just went for it. And so, but it's funny. I was thinking about the kind of macro, micro. When you were riffing on ideas, I was like, well, that's how we made the movie. We literally riffed on what we thought was funny. Like, now you think it's funny, but you never know what an audience is going to think, right? So, but you're right. It was really weird that it just became this thing. And for me, it was kind of like a dream come true, because I would have never thought that I could make, like, I wasn't trying to be that subversive.
Yeah, if you wanted to make something that would rile people up, you'd almost fail, because you can never design these things. Exactly.
So it was just, you know, it was really, really, it was such a weird experience. And, you know, and it's kind of like it's pre right before like cancel culture. It's kind of pre the Me Too movement. There's a
change,
there's pre-Trump. There's like, it's kind of like it kind of leads up to a lot of that stuff. And I had a small little taste of kind of what some of that was going to now become the cultural norm. It's not like people went after me personally, you know, they went after Kirk, but even not really Kirk, it was still like a movie in the version of itself. Him that's
on screen.
Yeah, you know, and I think that was probably the, you know, I mean, even the movie poster, it was like, I thought it was like, I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Like I remember the Last Action Hero poster, and I was like, we should do the Last Action Hero poster where Schwarzenegger's coming in, but we should just make it you. Right. And, you know, so it's like every little thing we thought was funny, I think really ended up pissing. Like it was just enough. We just thought it was funny, where like, even the version that went to Walmart didn't have that cover. It had like the Christmas tree, is like a little girl. You see her back. It's my daughter, and she's looking at the tree and the cross, and it's very Christian-y. You know, it's very like I think even if that had been the movie poster, like it wouldn't have upset people. But the idea that Kirk's coming right at you, it was just so like, you know. But I got to give it to Kirk. Like, people don't realize, like, if you ever want to see like the Kirk I know, Google or just go to YouTube and search Kirk Cameron witnesses to gang members.
Okay.
And there's a clip of him in like Venice, California, and he was just open air preaching. And all these gang dudes like then surround him, like vatos, like I'm talking shirts off, tatted up, like what the, they're just like, they're in his face, right? And Kirk is just sitting there in the middle. And if you watch Kirk, the way he handles himself and how he doesn't back down, it's one of the gnarliest things you'll ever see. And for me, that was always the Kirk that I kind of got to work with, which was a dude that was actually pretty gnarly. Like he's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I
like
mean, I think
he's not afraid.
Yeah, I think it's because, you know, over here across the sea, Kirk's not as well known as he probably is in the States. So
Right.
we only kind of know the image that's built up of him. I said on
Right.
the episode, I only know him from, Full House and things from before. So
Right.
it's not really knowing anything about him other than what the image is presented. So yeah, like what Kirk was like, and obviously we'll get into the questions and stuff, but
Yeah.
that's really interesting to hear.
Yeah, go. I'll let you guys run. I've been rambling.
No, you've actually just covered. I'm like, okay, don't need to ask that, don't need to ask that,
Yeah.
don't need to ask that. So the thing that's most relevant is probably the fact that it is Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. So I assume that's a marketing thing, because it seems like you're the Henry Selick of Saving Christmas. So in terms of the genesis, was it like an idea that you came up with and then got Kirk on board, and Sony were like, let's move with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a run of movies that we were doing more like documentary stuff, and then we made a little baseball movie called Mercy Rule, and a couple studios had reached out for that, and I was like, Kirk, let's just sell it ourselves into Walmart, which is our big department store over here, and we reached out to Walmart and sold this little baseball movie, and it did really, really well. And then we were like, well, let's just do I was like, how does Kirk Cameron not have a Christmas movie? I was like, it just seems like we should, there's gotta be something fun we can do. And we thought it was going to be maybe like a history of Christmas and more like a documentary. Okay, and again, we were kind of putting we were doing research, but it was pretty loose research. But then somewhere in doing the research, we started talking about just, again, you're sitting around having a beer and you're like, what would be funny?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, we just started riffing. And again, I think it just props to Kirk, because he was just unafraid to do it. He's like, this would be really, really fun, and this could be funny. And again, it's pretty punk rock. We just wanted to keep making stuff. We just liked we just liked trying to, make stuff. But again, in a weird way, like we never thought that it was going to ever do this, but it was just, then I think the marketing was Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas. Yeah. I think there was, again, once it got to Sony, it was sort of like all that stuff, they did test groups. Yeah. It was just like, like focus groups, and it was just crazy.
So you've kind of covered it already, but I listened to you before where you've spoken about the stealth aspect of the film, and you're kind of going undercover, and in making a more sort of comedic film, it allowed you to reach a wider audience than you would have if you had, say, made that documentary. Yeah. So the process of coming up with the angle was, you said it was all improv, so was just the two of you drinking beers and making each other laugh?
But then also we're both theology geeks.
Yeah.
Like theology. Like, I like theology. I didn't become a Christian until like my mid-20s. And when I became a Christian, I was like, oh, this is just like the punk rock scene. You got the vegan kids over here. You got the straight edge kids over here. You got the hardcore kids. You got the metal kids. You got the emo kids. You got the goth kids. And I saw the same thing like in sort of evangelical Christianity. It was like, oh, there's all these different groups and there's all these different subcultures. But my thing was like, I really loved reading every anti-Christian book. I loved reading everything like that, everything about the Bible, and can you trust it and all that. Like, I'm drawn to like that stuff. I loved all that stuff. And so for me, it was more, I like what we call typology. I love all the pictures throughout the Bible that are working themselves out all the way through. And you're like, oh, like, you got the end of the Bible, you got the book of Revelation, and you got like a sea beast, and you got a whore, and you got, and then you're like, oh, and you go back to Genesis first book, you're like, oh, you got like, you got a snake there, you got, oh, and you got a whore, oh, you got a false flag. I was like, oh, like, I love reading all these like German theologians that would connect all these images. Like, I'm the kid that would buy the album and go, oh, this guy produced that band and that guy engineered this and the studio. So for me, when I became a Christian, I was like, oh, I was just doing the same thing. Like, I was just a geek for like, the liner notes. I just loved all that. But in there, I think that's where you actually find art. And obviously in Christian culture, the arts are pretty much dead. And I think a lot of that has to do with because people don't look at the art and don't look at the structure. I mean, clearly there was something going on for the Bible to have the effect it did, whether it be architecture or even the medieval times, or like there was something going on. And now it's just this kind of lukewarm, pansy, soft, and I was looking at the Bible when I became a Christian, and I was like, this is punk rock, dude. This is gnarly. And then the more I got into that aspect of it, so as much as, and so all that's actually in Saving Christmas, but it's done in such a funny way. But that's all my theological geeky. Yeah, it's my hobby. Some people like to make, leather goods, or craft beer. Like for me, it's like I just like going deep into all things Bible. It's my only hobby.
That really comes across because there is that. I think what happens with a lot of non-secular art is it ends up very flat and non-oppositional. And what I liked is you have that contrast where you are the skeptic and that sort of opposition between the two of you.
Yeah,
it allows for an interesting conflict throughout the film that's much more akin to like Schrader or Scorsese, any of those sort of loss of faith films, than just your regular thing that you see on a Sunday where someone's like, here, let me tell you about my religion and why it's great.
Right. Yeah. And it's an interdialogue. It's again, it's in its own culture, so it's got its own language, but it's like if you're watching Moneyball, like it's their own language, right? You're watching someone make a movie about their own inside baseball. Like they're doing that. And I'm not saying that's what the movie is, but there is a deepness. And what was weird is like after it got released, which I think goes to your podcast, I remember all the hype or non-hype was going. And then I was driving home one day and I get a call from a buddy of mine and he goes, "Do you got nominated for a bunch of Razzies?" I was like, "What?" I was driving. I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you have like 4 Razzie nominations." And like one of my favorite people is Michael Bay, and I was like, "Tell me I'm in a category with Michael Bay."
Yeah.
He goes, "Dude, you're in a category with Michael Bay," and I was like, "I made it." And one of my favorite movies is All About Steve.
Yeah.
And which got a Razzie.
Yeah.
Which you haven't watched yet. That story is amazing, right? Because Sandra Bullock goes to the Razzies.
Yeah. Because that was The Blind Side year, wasn't it?
Yes, that was The Blind Side year. So she goes to the Razzies for that, and she calls them out. She's like, "Ain't none of you seen this movie?"
Yeah, it's something we've talked about at length. The Razzies, despite going through them, we're not a fan of the ceremonies or any of the sort of aspects about the actual awards. So that's kind of a question I had was, did the Razzies themselves contact you personally?
No, I would have went. I mean, I would have went. That would have been amazing. I was even trying to find out, like, how do I go?
Yeah,
like, that would have been.
We're going to help for that because I'm on a mission to make sure people get their Razzies. And I want one. I want to claim someone down the line is going to get me a Razzie, and just to show the farce of it, just to show everything, because I do not think they've watched like your film in particular, but I don't think they watch half of them, and it's more clickbait and hate-filled just to try and get some attention. So we're personally going to help this mission to get your Razzies.
Is this you angling to be the Sachin Littlefeather as you're going to go up on stage and make a statement about how it's all a fraud?
I will be.
How old are you guys? Because your references are like you're older than me. I have no idea how you're pulling this stuff off.
I'm 31. I just have no life, and most of the media I listen to is produced by people 10, 20, 30 years older than me.
Oh, you're pulling Brando references. I don't know how you're doing this. Like it's but it's funny. I got a sense of that when I started watching and listening to the podcast, which is why I really liked it. Again, I just want to be around people making stuff. That's the most inspiring thing to me. And when I saw what you guys were doing, let's be honest, there's a lot of crap out there, but that's cool. I mean, that's what it's all about. You start somewhere, you do stuff. 100%. But I was watching what you guys were doing though, but I was like, I've kind of made a living having some sense, whether it be from my music video career to the, like, I think I'm pretty good at going, that's what a director does. Like, hey, like, can you spot talent? Can you see good stuff? I was like, these guys are good. Like, these guys, like, and just the way you were doing it, like, there's a way someone could be doing what you're doing and not be endearing.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Well,
And
thank
that's
you very
what
much.
was, and that's what was so cool when I saw. I was like, I was jealous. I'm like, I want to be on the podcast. Like, how dare them? If they can tag me, I mean, reach out. I mean, don't just ding dong ditch and run away. It was like, if I
No.
where I'm at, like, invite me on. I mean, like, it was like,
Come on in.
I'm a fan. Yeah, I was like, and so I'm gonna get on now, because when you guys are crushing it and you guys blow up, then I get to be like, I was there first.
You're absolutely.
Thank you very much. We'll have you round to the house that the Razzies built.
Yeah.
when,
Yes.
This takes off. So again, I'm just looking at my notes, furiously crossing everything off. So you mentioned Michael Bay. That was one of the things I wanted to ask about. So you beat him for picture, but he beat you for director. How
Director,
do you
yeah,
feel
I
about
know.
that? Is that a point of pride to lose to him? Would you rather beat him? How do you feel?
I mean, and like, not joking, it kind of tells you, I think, all you need to know about the Razzies,
Absolutely.
right? Like, so you can, like, you're like, wow, you really just hate people,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I clearly should have won. Right, so it's kind of like, what is the standard here, you know what I mean? And so it really does kind of, like, I remember watching that when I finally saw it, and I remember thinking, like, wow, this is, to me, it was kind of the end of an era, because again, it seemed like right after that the world really does change, and the kind of open source knowledge and review and how people get, like, it was all over. There's no more critics. Everyone gets the game. No one really cares who wins the Oscar. And then you think if the Oscar's done, you get Will Smith, right? And then he ruins the whole thing. And everyone, like everything really begins to crumble kind of not too long after that. And then you really do have just we live in a new world where it's like no other cross-reference critic matters or will matter ever again.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're
such a
cultural.
I love.
You're such a cultural sage here, because that's something that we've gone over and over. Where with the Bruce Willis aphasia thing and the criticism they rightly attracted for that was just like, this is the last gasp dying. It just shows what a dinosaur is, where it's like, there's no point to the Razzies anymore, because they're just this cruel personal vendetta in an age when the internet has democratized everything. There's no need for the Razzies to exist anymore. They are just this relic. And
and when people were really going after Saving Christmas, and I remember saying, like, like, I was like, Hollywood made Hot Tub Time Machine.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me. Like, what are we, and I'm glad Hot Tub Time Machine's out there. They probably have a blast doing it, and so I think I really love, because I think the punk rock independent DIY world really has won out, because we do live in an age now where everyone truly gets to find their own section in the record store.
100%. Right? Yeah.
And you don't flip through your bin of records and lean over and go, that band sucks. No, you stay in your lane. You do your thing, and that's the way it works. And I think now with 8 billion people on the planet, 4 billion are online, we get to live in a way that I think is just really, really cool, because you get to find your thing, do your thing. I mean, and look, Netflix knows this. They don't release numbers.
Yeah.
No.
Netflix doesn't release numbers. They don't do, and every artist now, every actor knows that that's the best gig in the world now, is getting that big. Like, I don't even know. Did that Lord of the Rings thing or whatever it was that a success? Was it not? I have no idea.
Can it be a success?
It can't be a success. No.
I mean, like I said, I don't. But this is the point. But you know what? Whatever's going on, like, not a nihilistic sort of relativistic way, but nothing matters anymore in that category.
Yeah.
Now, how that cashes out, I don't know. But what I do know is right now, people have gotten real good at not hearing the noise.
Yeah. You have to, otherwise it'll drive you insane if you're tuned into all that chatter and hate constantly.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so to answer that, yeah, I just don't think that's, I think you're talking Michael Bay, but yeah, I think it just showed that I was like, this is just, it really is just kind of cruel. But if you come from a punk rock background, you're like, or if you're a real artist, you're like, I don't need anyone telling me that my work sucks.
Yeah.
No,
like
that's not why you make it.
I know how much I hate my work. Right. Like, that's why artists kill themselves all the time, right? Now, I will never bag on my work, and I'll tell you why. I can personally have that artist connection with people. I don't like anything I've made. That's just, you talk to artists, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But you never turn on the fan.
No.
As soon as you do that, like, no. People love this movie. To this day, every year, I get these letters. Every year. We're 8 years out now, whatever. Every year, you saved my life. I was going to put a bullet in my head. I was raised with a father that stopped celebrating Christmas. We reconciled. Over and over and over. You're like, these are the fakest letters because there's no way this is true. And yet every year, dozens of people find me and they say, you literally brought our family back together. Are you like, you can't make this stuff up. You never turn on the audience. Henry Rollins, he says, I don't care if 5 people show up or 5,000 people show up. I'm going to play 110%. And when you make something, you got to say, at the end of the day, if someone showed up to watch it and enjoyed it, I back them for as long as I'm alive, because you never turn on the audience and go, yeah, you're right, Razzies. I'm a shitty director. You totally got me. I can't believe I did this. I hope next time, I'll work harder next time. And then the person's like, what do you mean? Like, I love that movie. That changed my life. You don't know what that art does. You never turn on the audience.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is something that I always struggle with on the podcast is Kyle will make some incredible sort of heartfelt salient point, and as the sort of flippant one, I'm like, okay, how do I follow that up?
Right,
because
sure,
yeah, because I'd heard you say that before about the letters you receive every year with people finding your film, and yeah, that's just a testament to the film, because I can't imagine Michael Bay getting letters saying like, hey, Michael, like Transformers 5 saved my life.
Yeah, no, it's funny, probably not in that category, and yet every time I watch a Michael Bay movie, like, I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe humans can do what he does.
Yeah.
I don't care about the story. I don't care about the script. I literally have no idea what's going on in Transformers. I have no idea. I do not know the storyline at all. And I just watch it and I go, what kind of maniac and the 500 people with him can do this? I just, so to me, in that weird, that would be, but you're right. Maybe he doesn't get that letter, but on the opposite side, it's like, I look at stuff like that and, and you think of the work he does and the amount of money that gets raised for his films and the people that get fed and the people that, there's a whole industry around him. I mean, it's not like he's a hack. I mean, I guess people could say I don't like his work or the stories he picks, but I mean, that dude seems to be having the best time ever.
Absolutely. That's something we kind of covered, is like with the Razzies, I don't know whether they're looking for people who have failed, like some people who sort of like fumble the ball, but it's like Michael Bay makes exactly the movie he set out to make.
100%.
And now, like he's an auteur. Like, no one else does what he does. Like, you watch one frame of a Michael Bay film and you're like, I know who did that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm old enough to remember, like, legitimately when Spielberg was a joke.
Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people forget that run of movies, 88, 89, 90.
Yeah.
Spielberg's done. His career is over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad time. I mean, I think it's like Always with Richard Dreyfuss, and then it's Hook. Hook was the big failure, and it was just dumb, and it was like his Saving Christmas. Like it was over, and it's Dustin Hoffman doing this thing, and like he's a joke. His career is literally over. And I remember I was working on my first feature, and my cinematographer was the first AC for Darius Kanji.
Oh, cool.
Who, wow. Right. So, and Darius Kanji was the biggest joke in the cinematography world. This is why if you do this long enough, you're not afraid of being a joke. Is Darius Kanji? Is it Darius Kanji? Yeah. Is it Darius or is it? Hold on. Who? Janusz Kaminski. Sorry, Janusz Kaminski.
Yeah.
Janusz. Sorry, Janusz does
everything Spielberg's done since.
Well, yeah, but,
acclaim, yeah.
Well, no, but it starts with what's it called?
Schindler's List, or
right. Now here's the thing. So Spielberg, I know this because my DP was his first AC.
Yeah.
And Janusz was the joke because he was known as being the DP with the worst colors in movies.
Really?
So if you look right before Schindler's List, he does, I think, a movie called Cool as Ice with Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, super, like the colors are just so like Fujifilm. I think he even shot on Fujifilm, which no one did. It's pastel-y, and everyone was like, oh, he's just so bad, So the joke in Hollywood, but underground Hollywood, us kids trying to come up, was that it made sense because Spielberg needed a Polish Jew. He was looking for a Polish dude to make Schindler's List. Like he was like, I need to find someone. Well, okay, Janusz Kaminski, right? And the joke in town was, well, that makes sense that he made a black and white movie because he's horrible at color. Like that was like the joke amongst friends, like, he's doing the Spielberg movie. Yeah. And everyone was like, Spielberg's doing a Holocaust movie? It was like Spielberg?
Yeah.
Right? And he had done this, and I remember because my buddy was working with him and said he would go from, I forget the order, but either he would go from working on Jurassic Park, and then at night he'd be editing this black and white movie, or the opposite. I forget, the black and white movie, then at night doing it was like, what's going on here? A dinosaur movie and a Holocaust movie? Like this is now the end of Spielberg. And of course that becomes
that's the making of
the next level of Spielberg. So, it's funny how people gauge directors and what they do and how they do it. And in one sense, I think it was maybe almost, it's understandable when you had the system that was the system, but that system doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question for you here. So you have a relatively unique Razzie pedigree, given that prior to Saving Christmas, you were in Newsies. Is that correct?
Did that get nominated?
Yeah, Newsies was nominated for Worst Picture, and I think it won Worst Song. I think Duval was also nominated. It was a load of nonsense because, like, Newsies is great, but they nominated it.
Yeah, I'm in Newsies. Yeah, I'm in Newsies. Yeah, I'm what we call a featured extra.
Okay.
So,
and being
which again, go ahead. This is great.
Well, I was going to say, being a featured extra in Newsies. A friend of mine told me that there's this thing online where people pick a gang member from Newsies and just try and follow them throughout the film. That's apparently a big thing that people do. So I was wondering, have you received like any other offers for podcasts, like Mr. Doane?
No, but I should. I should because I'm in Spot's gang. Yeah. But then I do double up during the big final big battle. I am the first guy to come busting through the gate before the big thing, but I'm in Spot's gang. I'm smoking we had these fake cigarettes, the all natural, like we all had headaches. We were sick. We were throwing up. But yeah, I'm like 20. I'm like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably 19 years old. I'd done a couple music videos and then was broke. And without, I was like and because my dad was in the industry, he would bring me on the set as a kid. And so at some point I did some background extra work, and then that was it. And then I'm 19 years old and I get a call and they say, hey, we're looking for some extras for a project. And I was like, I'm a director now. And the guy was like, oh, okay. Then like a week went by and he called back again. He was a really nice guy. And Bill Bonnell at Central Casting, and he goes, hey, I called you about a week ago. Look, I know you're directing now, which is a very sweet thing to say. He goes, I know you're directing now. He goes, I've got 45 days of work for you at $165 a day and meal penalties.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I could take that money. I can make a short film.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I took the gig, and that kind of starts everything, because I become friends with Christian Bale. Christian Bale does my first short film that I did. And one of the actors, Trey Parker, not the Trey Parker from South Park, but one of the one of the main actors, Trey Parker, he had a band. He had a R&B dance troupe group thing, and I shot their music video. They got signed to MCA Records. They liked the music video. MCA Records then said, hey, we'd like to meet with you. And that got me doing major label record. So like everything starts like with what you think is a dumb opportunity, right? Like, and you do that. And I remember, because I'm friends with Christian Bale at that time, and I watched what it was like for people to destroy a movie, to be with another human being while the world started wrecking you. And I watched the way he handled it. I was with him on the final sound mix. We went down to the studio the day when they were mixing it. I got to watch Kenny Ortega, who directed it. I got to become friends with Kenny Ortega, and
he was nominated for worst director, which is insane.
Right.
That's directed so well.
Right, and the but I got to watch Kenny Ortega on the set every day when the executives were coming, and you could tell like stuff was just kind of falling apart. You could tell, and I watched the way he never put his head down. I'd watch him walk into the all the little, whatever we call those things, trailers and stuff, and then he'd come out, and 3 executives would leave. He'd come out, his head would be up, and I watched him, like handle himself. And I remember thinking, to this day when I direct, I never put my head down, like, because you can get kind of in a thought and be thinking. And I watched Kenny, he never put his head down. He commanded what he was doing, how he did it. And I remember then Kenny Ortega then was the joke of the town, right? So Kenny's, horrible movie, Christian Bale, and I think he had, and I don't have the story right correctly, but I remember after that, I think he still had like one. Well, he does. Was Hocus Pocus after that or before that? I'm forgetting, but
Kyle?
He did Hocus Pocus.
I believe it was before.
I think so.
93, isn't it? And
Hocus Pocus is 93.
It's a 3-picture. He's got a 3-picture directing deal. This is what I knew. And after Newsies, it was just like, well, we ain't giving Kenny Ortega anything ever again. That was kind of like oh no. But he had one left on his contract. And I think this is the great, like these stories you hear. And at some point, someone said, we've got this stupid little Disney Channel thing. We need someone that's got choreography experience, all that. Just give it to Kenny. Just give it to Kenny. We've got one. We've got to give him something, and that's High School Musical.
Yeah. Wow.
And then that explodes, right? And you see. I mean, it's brutal. I mean, I think that's why I still go back to John Cassavetes, who said, anyone that's made a movie, I already like them. It's like bands on the road. Bands, if you've been on the road, bands just you know what it's like to be in a crappy bar, people throwing stuff at you, or just that. And so if you've ever made a movie on any level where you've borrowed $100,000 or $10,000 or 10 million, the pressure, the risk reward is just so insane. It's gangster level insane. You're playing with millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And these guys are killers on every level to be able to do what they do. But I did not know about Newsies, but Newsies is a great example where it's like 10 years later, it was like, wait, how did this become the greatest movie? I mean, I was just somewhere, I was at an event, and a girl came running up because her dad knew me, and she was kind of almost crying. She said, "Can I please take a picture with you? You were in Newsies." That's a 10-year-old. That's like 10, 11-year-old today.
Yeah.
So as all this stuff goes by, I think the only, again, and I'm kind of proud of this, the only difference with Saving Christmas and all that other stuff, I really think Saving Christmas showed up right with social media as far as Twitter and Twitter sphere and all of that. Like, so there's something special. Like, I didn't even know News. I know Newsies bombed, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And now it's a cult classic. And now it's on Broadway. Now it's all these things. But there was something really special about like really taking it at a time when social media shows up. And to me, it's like, well, that just makes it even better.
Absolutely. Like if you're a few years earlier, it doesn't happen. If you're a few years
No.
later, nobody's interested because it happens all the time.
Right.
You're right in the pocket.
Yeah. Very, very, I mean, I'm lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, we're coming up for the hour. Kyle, do you have any closing?
I have one final question, and it's actually about Saving Christmas, and
Okay.
it was something I brought up in the podcast. The hot chocolate. Why were the mugs empty? Was there any reason for that at all?
I'm trying to think which there's because there's a couple hot chocolate scenes. I'm trying to think which one.
Well, I think the mugs are empty in every shot. That's my theory.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if they are or not. I mean, if they are, I mean, it could be oversight. It could be we didn't care. But I do know in that. But I do know in the opening scene there is like anytime there was food or drink, it was all legit. Like we brought in caterers because we just made it a party.
Yeah.
So it's always, there was always like real food and drink and hot chocolate. We had kids there and stuff. So but I mean, it could have just been, I mean, it's literally 5 of us trying to make a movie.
Yeah. Of course.
I mean, like literally it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 people. It's camera, AC, it's director of photography, it's sound. Yeah, like it's just, it's and then my dad would hang out, and I'd always put a cameo of my dad in my movies.
Oh, nice.
And so it was, it was probably just I mean, you're running so fast and there's no script.
Yeah.
So, I will say this, I don't think I've ever told the story on camera, so I will give you what I think is the best story about
an exclusive. I love it. Thank you.
We haven't asked that much about production.
Yes, this is definitely an exclusive because people that know me know the story. But so when we're doing Inside the Car that night, we show up, and so me and Kirk are sitting there in the car. We're kind of rehearsing, thinking about what we're going to go through. Okay. And Kurt, comes in the car, and he's like, I got some really awesome Belgian ales. And I was like, cool. And so I put one down there, and I think he had one. For the sake of Kirk, maybe Kirk didn't have one. And so, but we're sitting there, and so we're just having a beer, kind of working through the lines. It's taking a little longer to set up as usual, and then I think we had a second beer, and we kind of get ready, and we're about to start rolling. I remember I looked down, and I was going to make sure it wasn't the shot. It was like a 9.8%, white Belgium. I was like 9.8. I've had 2 of these. And I was like, but I was sitting down, so I was like, I ain't standing up, right?
Yeah.
And so we basically do the entire movie, beginning to end. We riff all the way through because we knew the structure. And so for 45 minutes, we just went through the whole movie and did the scene. We had 3 cameras rolling. So it was just, let's just go. Right. Yeah. And I just remember when it was over, I stepped out, I got out of the car, and I was like, oh my goodness, I drank 2 9.5% beers in 30 minutes. And then we just and then we just did it. Like we just went for like, we just riffed for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
And if you go back and look, there's a couple parts, but towards the end where I'm talking about like, at some part where like Kirk's actually there's parts where if you watch when Kirk's laughing, like kind of he's just laughing at me. Like we're literally two dudes having a couple beers, just laughing and riffing and just total improv. And we're just like having a blast and just being jolly and like any adult male knows, you drink 9.5% beers. Oh, yeah. You're in the zone. You're comfy. You're not loaded. You're not drunk, but you're feeling good. You're just with you're at the pub with your mates and you're just like, this is a good time. It's a 2-beer moment and we're just, and to me, that's still the favorite part when it's funny because for me, it'll be Christmas time. It just comes up it's just on TV. Like if you flipping it's just on TV in America here. And it gets to that point and I'm like, that's just two dudes having a great time, laughing, having a couple beers, like, never thought the world was going to see this. And so to me, that's like still like, I have so much affection for like that part of the process that it really was just that down to earth, kind of just two dudes having a beer.
Truly surreal. That
never told the story. So
it comes across as well. Like it comes the fun of it and the relaxedness of Saving Christmas. It comes across on the screen. So that's a great little story. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you for the exclusive. Awesome. Just hammers home.
Very welcome.
Truly surreal that essentially like a home movie, two dudes having a beer, goes on to become like this lightning rod, the most criticized movie, and couldn't make it up. Well, thank you so much for gracing our podcast with your
Thank you very much. Before we wrap up, is there anything we'd like to shout out for you? Any projects you're working on?
No, I mean, I got a ton of stuff. I mean, I have a creative agency and, it's just kind of what I've done forever. It's movies here and there, documentaries, music videos. I'm working on a couple. I got 2 docu-series, television series projects I'm doing right now. It's all still punk rock. I just love doing as many things as possible. I think it's a completely new day. And I'm just trying to be what I think is happening right now is just working with companies and helping them understand that content is driving everything. And if you don't understand that, a lot of people are going to be left, in a real bad place because the only way to communicate now is doing this, and you have to lean into every opportunity you get to communicate, share what you do, how you do it, every opportunity to reach out to other people that are doing stuff. For me, that's like the most, again, I think you guys are incredibly talented. I'm curious what you guys do. My last question was going to be, what do you guys do when you're not doing this? I have to know what you do to pay the bills.
I'm a failed actor.
Okay.
Yeah, I prior to the pandemic, I was living in Vancouver, BC, and then moved back to the UK and have been continuing to pursue acting to limited success, making sort of small filmy things on the side and doing whatever actors do to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Give me one of the things you do to pay the bills. Hold on. Give me one of the things you do to pay the bills.
One of the things. I work for a communications and PR agency.
Okay. All right. There you go. All right.
And when I'm not starring in Jericho's short films and ruining them, I'm a wannabe writer and pay the bills. I'm a bar manager, so managing bars and pubs and hospitality. It's kind of been my trade for the last decade.
I love it. No, that's so cool. Well, let me know what the first project is I can invest in, okay? And
you'll be the first person we're going to give you a call.
Please do. I really believe in just the kind of energy you guys are bringing, and if I can help in any way within this or outside of this, really just let me know. I appreciate you guys. I really appreciate how you handle the project and the stuff and just what you've been handling all the other stuff that you're talking about. I think it's really impressive. So I'm a fan, and thank you guys.
Well, thank you so
and
much.
thank
You've
you.
already helped by reaching out to us and harassing us for our terrible manners in that immediately welcoming you to the podcast. So no thanks required on your part. You've already done so much for us. So
And
really
we will
appreciate it.
continue our mission to make sure you get the Razzie physical award that you deserve. I'm not going to cease until that's done.
If you get it, I'll fly both guys out to present it to me, okay?
Deal. Verbal agreement.
Perfect.
Well, there you have it. Once again, huge thanks to Darren Doane for joining us on this episode. We really hope you enjoyed listening to him as much as we enjoyed speaking to him. And as ever, you can follow us on Watching Worst, where we'll be posting clips from this interview on our various social media platforms. And join us next week when we'll be coming back down to earth with the Emoji Movie. See you then.